only thing that would stop it was a 14-year-old boy, a rusty bicycle, and a single piece of wire. Not explosives, not a gun, a wire, the kind you'd use to hang laundry. The partisans had laughed at him. The adults had called him stupid. But that wire, stretched across the tracks at exactly the right angle, was about to do what bombs couldn't. Piotr Zawadzki was a farm boy who delivered eggs on his bicycle. He had never held a weapon, never trained with the resistance. The only thing he knew about trains was what he'd learned by watching them pass while he waited at crossings. What he did over the next 6 weeks would destroy 4 Nazi supply trains, kill over 200 German soldiers, and force the Wehrmacht to divert an entire battalion just to guard one railway line. The Germans launched a massive investigation. They executed suspected partisans. They tripled their patrols. They never once suspected a child. Summer of 1943. Occupied Poland. The German army was bleeding in the east, and every bullet had to travel by rail through territory filled with people who wanted them dead. The partisans attacked constantly, but the Germans had learned to defend the trains. Armed guards, armored cars, patrols on every kilometer. Direct attacks had become suicide missions. The resistance needed something new, something invisible, something the Germans would never think to look for. But before Piotr could save anyone, he had to survive being laughed out of the room by the only people who could help him, and what happened when they rejected him would set everything else in motion. Piotr was the youngest of 5 children on a farm that barely fed his family. His father had been taken for forced labor. His oldest brother had joined the partisans and hadn't been seen in months. His mother worked from dawn until collapse just to keep the Germans from taking everything. Piotr's job was delivering eggs and milk to villages along the railway. He rode his bicycle through German checkpoints every day, a skinny Polish kid with a basket, invisible to soldiers looking for threats. He had been watching trains for 2 years, not for any reason, just because they were there, thundering past while he waited at crossings. He noticed patterns, when guards changed shifts, where patrols grew thin, the exact stretch of track where trains slowed to climb a grade. But the idea came from his bicycle. The front wheel wobbled at high speed, a vibration that got worse until the whole bike shook apart if he didn't slow down. He'd learned to feel it coming. One day, watching a train lumber up a hill, he wondered, did trains have weak points too? He asked the village blacksmith, an old man who'd worked on railways before the war. The blacksmith explained that on certain curves at certain speeds, train wheels could briefly lose their grip on the rails. Normally, nothing happened, but if something disrupted that grip at exactly the right moment, the blacksmith stopped. His face went pale. "Whatever you're thinking, forget it." Piotr didn't forget. He brought his idea to the partisans. They listened for about a minute before laughing him out of the room. A wire against a train. The commander told him to go home and leave the war to adults. Piotr went home, but he didn't stop. For weeks he experimented in secret. The first wire was too thin. It snapped the moment he tested it with a weight. The second was too thick. It wouldn't slip under the wheel flange the way he needed. He tried different angles, different anchoring methods. Most of them failed. Twice he almost got caught. Once a German patrol came within meters of his hiding spot while he was testing wire tension. Another time, his mother noticed him coming home with grease on his hands and asked questions he couldn't answer. But slowly he figured it out. The wire had to be a specific thickness. It had to be anchored at a precise angle so the wheel would ride up onto it instead of cutting through. Timing was everything. On a night in mid-August, he tried it for real. He rode to the curve at midnight, stretched the wire, anchored it to rocks on both sides, and hid in the woods. Then he waited. The train came after 3 in the morning. Piotr watched the headlights sweep around the bend, watched the locomotive hit the wire. For a long moment, nothing happened. The train kept climbing. His heart sank. Then the third car jumped the tracks. The derailment pulled car after car off the rails. Ammunition exploded. The night sky turned orange. Piotr watched from the trees, shaking, as the railway burned. The next morning, Germans flooded the area. They searched the wreckage. They interrogated villagers. They found no explosives, no saboteurs, no explanation. But they executed 3 suspected partisans anyway, just to send a message. Piotr knew those men. One had a son his age. He went back to delivering eggs with their faces burned into his mind. He should have stopped. Any sane person would have stopped. But Piotr had seen what the wire could do, and there were more trains coming. He hit them again 3 weeks later, a fuel train this time. The fire burned for 2 days. Then again in September, another ammunition convoy. Each success brought more German soldiers into the region. Each success brought more executions, more interrogations, more fear. The partisans stopped laughing. The commander who had dismissed him sent messengers asking for a meeting. Piotr refused. He didn't trust adults anymore. Adults got people killed and called it strategy. The Germans responded by fortifying the entire railway, soldiers every few hundred meters, patrol trains running ahead of every convoy. They searched everyone who came near the tracks, except the egg boy on the bicycle. But now the window for setting wire had shrunk to almost nothing. The spots he'd used before were crawling with guards. If he tried again, he'd have to get closer to the patrols than ever before. The 4th attack would be the most dangerous, and it would nearly be his last. October 3rd, 1943. Full moon. Piotr had found a new location, a tighter curve, closer to a checkpoint, with barely enough cover to hide. He moved slowly, staying low. It took 2 hours to cover ground he could normally cross in 20 minutes. He was anchoring the wire when he heard German voices. A patrol coming around the bend. He was completely exposed in the moonlight. If he ran, they'd see him. If he stayed, they'd find him. He had seconds to decide. He dropped flat and stopped breathing. The soldiers passed within 5 meters. One stopped to light a cigarette, so close Piotr could smell the tobacco. They talked about the ghost saboteur, the cursed railway, how nothing made sense anymore. Then they moved on. Piotr finished the wire with shaking hands. The train that night was the biggest yet. A priority convoy carrying troops and equipment for a division shattered at Kursk. 23 cars, running fast because the Germans wanted it through the danger zone as quickly as possible. Speed was exactly what Piotr needed. 16 cars went off the tracks. The ammunition cooked off for hours. 89 German soldiers died, including a colonel being transferred to a new command. 4 trains, 260 dead, 6 weeks of chaos on a critical supply line. A 14-year-old boy with a piece of wire had done what trained saboteurs couldn't, and he was never caught. Piotr stopped after the 4th attack, not by choice. His mother had heard whispers in the village, rumors about a saboteur, suspicions that pointed nowhere but still pointed. She confronted him. He couldn't lie to her. She didn't cry or yell. She just looked at him and said, "If you do it again, they will figure it out, and they will kill everyone you love to punish you." Piotr put down the wire. He survived the war. His mother survived. After liberation, he told his story to a Soviet officer who didn't believe him until Piotr drew diagrams of exactly how the technique worked. The Soviets studied it, refined it, used it for decades. Piotr never asked for recognition. He went back to farming, married, raised children. When people asked about the war, he shrugged and said, "I just did what made sense. The adults were overcomplicating it." He died in 1992. His obituary said he was a farmer and a father. It didn't mention the trains. It didn't mention the wire. It didn't mention that a boy with a bicycle had done the impossible. But the records exist if you know where to look. German reports about a cursed railway, Soviet files about an unusual technique, and somewhere in Poland, a village where old people still remember the boy who won his war with a piece of wire. That's the story they never told you. That's the missing page. If you want more stories like this, you know what to do.